we spoke to Harry Moore-Gwyn at his London gallery to exclusively preview his new exhibition, British Romantic Art.
So what we have here is a collection of essentially British paintings and drawings. It was quite hard to find a title for this show because it's in a sense quite eclectic. It starts with English watercolours of circa 1830 and it ends with an Emma Sargeant drawing from 2004. So it's quite a big, it's quite a wide scope of collection. But what I quite like about it is in a sense we're used to slightly artificial parameters for the way we group art. I mean, auction house catalogues will have watercolours, will have Victorian art, traditionally they'll have modern British art. This is the way Sotheby's and Christie's and Bonhams have done it over the years. And most collectors don't collect like that. And this is typical of a collector who's sort of looking date-wise, either side of date lines, but looking at probably stuff that reflects their interest and their eye. And I think in the case of this artist, sort of quite romantic subjects, if you like, and good drawings. There's some really good drawings in this collection. And things that have gone in and out of fashion. So there's less, some of the best things, I think, are things you would argue are less fashionable today. And they look better value now, I think, than they did in the 1990s for that reason. We're looking at a watercolour by William Fraser Garden. Our title for this is A Wooded River Landscape, but it is almost certainly the Great Ouse in Cambridgeshire. It's a river that he painted a huge amount, and most of his watercolours of this subject are painted in these amazing, strong, I've said almost electric greens. They're amazing colours. Very intense colouring. It's a watercolour that is clearly influenced by Pre-Raphaelite landscape painting in that sense. You get these very intense colours in Pre-Raphaelite landscape painting, and he's very much following this tradition. And it's technically exceptional bit of painting, I think. The sort of the details, shadows and depth, the leaves of the tree there, and the way the landscape and the riverscape sort of recede into the background. I think a lot of these Victorian painters would have painted these in the studio in the end. Because they're so heavily worked and detailed, it would be essentially impossible to paint a watercolour like that on plein air. The studio watercolour was a big thing in the Victorian period. And most artists, particularly before the later 19th century, when it became a strong tradition to go on plein air and do that, they were purposely they were idealising these subjects, and in a sense you could argue this is a very idealised, very heightened image of reality that is probably far removed from what this scene actually looked like, even at the date. You know, these kind of watercolours. We look at Myles Birket Foster, which I think is comparable as well. I mean, they probably go beyond the reality. Their showpieces are really of technique of how well these artists could paint aspects of landscape. This is another, I think, real star of the collection. It's just exquisite bit of watercolour painting by him. I mean, technically, such an exceptional artist, using this sort of scratching out techniques and body colour. And it's a view of the Thames, but it's pretty faultless in execution, I think. Amazing cloudscape and the way he does the water with the white heightening is amazing bit of painting, really. He is the term chocolate box, in a sense, comes from these sort of artists. I mean, Cadbury's used Myles Birket Foster to illustrate chocolate boxes in the 19th century, because his images are so popular. Lovely, sort of quite late David Cox, roughly 1845. You know, an artist who, has a sort of aspect of a sense of proto-impressionism about him. He's looking at sort of, again, much a fresher plein air approach to painting in watercolour. And you do feel it with him, I think, in the best of his work. The wonderful cloud and the sense of the coast in the background, and the sense of the school of the slightly unsettled day, I suppose. It's got an inscription on the old Blackpool, which is why we know it's Hastings. A lot of English artists are a bit interested in the coast, and it's a very strong period for painting the English coastside, actually. A lot of painters were painting subjects like this, and to a degree responding to the appetite in the public for these sort of subjects. Well, we can briefly look at the Wint. I think it's such a fantastic example of his work. Wonderful big scale Wint exhibition watercolour, showing an aspect of rural life. It's a sawmill there that you can see in the centre of the figure, soaring in front of the house. Just a very beautiful example of how good watercolour painting can be at its best at evoking nature. And Wint is one of the best, the greatest artists to do that at this stage. Its reflection is wonderful, and all the detail of the doves and the ponds. It captures water really beautifully, I think. You're looking at works by two of the best known names in early English watercolour, early 19th century English watercolour painting there.
Visit the full exhibition at Six Masons Yard until the 28th of October.